On today's episode of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, we're going to tell you how Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe can help his 2025 NFL draft stock with a big performance down in Mobile at the Reese Senior Bowl. This and more coming up next.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Locked On family? Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast, your daily podcast. Cover your favorite draft prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your boy, Damian Parson. You can find and follow me on X at DP_NFL. I'm a senior draft analyst, and thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. And you know I got to kick the intro to Mr. LSU himself, Keith Sanchez. You can find and follow him on X at TheTalentCode. Keep talking to him, baby.
What's up, Locked On family? Let's get locked in. This is Keith Sanchez, 2019 national champ, man. And the other side to this dynamic duo that we like to call the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to start this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. Every listener is greatly appreciated here over at Locked On NFL Draft. DP, let's get this thing going. We are talking Senior Bowl. And what's the most attractive thing to Senior Bowl? Everybody wants to see the quarterbacks, right? They want to see them throw the rock, sling the rock. So we're going to talk about Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe. We're going to talk about Ole Miss quarterback Jaxson Dart. And then we're going to talk about Oregon quarterback Dillon Gabriel. DP, let's start at the top. Jalen Milroe. Let's get into the conversation.
Crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the app and use the code LOCKEDON NFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Keith, 6'2", 225-pound junior quarterback out of Alabama, Jalen Milroe, declared for the 2025 NFL Draft. Keith, talk to me. How do you feel about, number one, his decision, and then what does he need to prove and showcase down in Mobile to help his 2025 NFL Draft stock?
Yeah, I think there's multiple facets to this conversation, right? And I guess I'll start with if he should have came out or not, right? Because I know that was a big conversation. And the thing is I would say find me a better spot than Alabama, because we don't know outside of Ryan Williams what Alabama's weapons are, right? And if you watch that game against Michigan, for those who watched the game, you want to talk about a combination of things that happened. It was in Tampa Bay in St. Pete. The sun is shining. The 5 minutes that they have the football, a hurricane comes through, literally, right? You can't even see. And then, right, like they have 2-3 turnovers, and then they get the ball back. I mean, and then, they have the fumble, strip sack, fumble, things like that. So I just think that I look at the situation with Alabama, and I don't know. I think people are grading his production based off of what Bryce Young did at Alabama, what Tua Tagovailoa did at Alabama, what Mac Jones did at Alabama. But are those receivers there? Like we talking about, we were high on, what's the wide receiver? Isaiah Bond, right?
Yeah.
And even at Texas, Matthew Golden came in and outperformed Isaiah Bond. And we can say we want about it, but that's what happened, right? So I look at Jalen, and I think he's played a good amount of football at the end of the day. I think his improvements, and this is the same guy, right? When we was on a staff call, that was me who said I have Jalen Milroe with a second-round grade coming into the season, right? So I was fair in that part of it. I just don't know how much more, unless it was a totally different situation where he went to like Ohio State or something, where he has Jeremiah Smith and all of these high-leverage weapons, right? I don't know many other spots where it would have been like, okay, he can definitely improve everything across the board. I almost feel like he put his time in. That's how I feel. I feel like he put his time in, and we know who Jalen Milroe is as a quarterback prospect.
Yeah, because I did a pod. I dropped it last Thursday. It was like right before I did a bonus pod right before he even declared. I actually didn't think he was going to. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, should he declare? And I made the case. I was like, I don't think he should. I think going back, and it's just kind of evolving isn't just for prospects, it's for evaluators as well. I'm all for, because he's got the tools, the talent, and everything else. Watching Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels and these 23, 24-year-old quarterbacks that played a lot of college ball. It all wasn't great, but they played a lot of college ball, and they saw everything, and the game slowed down so much for them that once they got to the league, they had to deal with the change of speeds and the condensedness of the NFL, but it wasn't like, man, like the game is so much faster for them. You know what I mean? They had already slowed the game down. I felt like for Milroe, and because of how the NFL is so finicky with developing quarterbacks, I was like, man, I don't know if this is the right situation for you to come out in right now. Like, yeah, this quarterback class doesn't have a lot, it's not a great class. Next year's class might have deterred him because you got a lot of names: Arch, Nico Iamaleava, Cade Klubnik, Taylor Green, Drew Aller, potentially. Like, it could be a loaded group of names, right? So I understand it. But I think for him, Keith, going to the Senior Bowl, this is where you make your money. I think this is where you make your money. The things that I saw on tape watching him, he's still struggling to trust his eyes at times. And it's like, Jalen, just rip it, let it go. Like, you're holding on to the ball, you're not trusting what you're seeing. And I feel like that's when the game is just moving just at erratic pace for him. I think if the game slows down for him, he could be a good quarterback playing in the pocket. What we saw at that Georgia game, that's the ceiling for him in the pocket. On top of the elite rushing ability, like what we see from Lamar Jackson. I'm not saying he could be Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson threw for over 4,100 yards passing this year, almost 1,000 yards rushing. I literally look at what Cam Newton was able to do and different things. Like, that's what Jalen Milroe and Anthony Rich, those guys can do that. They may never be 5,000 yard passers like Joe Burrow, but they can account for 4,400 yards total from the line of scrimmage.
Well,
and
that's the thing, is that people looking at him as a pure pocket passing quarterback, and we're way past it. Like, people have to start developing their minds, right, and understanding that the game of football is changing. So if you can't see Jalen Milroe being a first round quarterback, well, is that based off of what the NFL game was, right? And I think that's like, because I looked at his stats, right, and you look at his passing stats and you like, no way, right? I think he's like 16 touchdowns, I think, and 10
interceptions, yeah.
But he has 20 rushing touchdowns. Like, he's outpacing probably every running back outside of Ashton, Genty, and Omari and Hampton in touchdowns, right? Like, he's on pace with them. So I think that when I look at him, the first person that comes to mind is two people and what they've done with them, right? I look at Greg Roman, what he was able to do with an early Lamar Jackson, making him comfortable, right? What he was able to do with Colin Kaepernick. And then I look at that combination of Shane Steichen when he was at Philly, right? What he's able to do with Jalen Hurts. The conversation, I think, is going to come down to, because we said this at the very beginning of this podcast. You remember we was like, what guys in the NFL need to do good to help out Jalen Milroe, right? And we talked about Jalen Hurts. We talked about Anthony Richardson. I guess the question is, because I know there's some people that's like, hey, they loved Anthony Richardson, but then they out on Jalen Milroe. Where do you find that line to, I guess, say that? Like, what's the evaluation in that? Are they out on Anthony Richardson now, or are they like, what's the line in that to be like, you know what, Anthony Richardson was a raw prospect. He had the physical tools. He can run. He had the issues at Florida, right? But we overlook those and say, like, you know what, we'll take him top 10. But Jalen Milroe as a quarterback prospect is like, you know what, has some rawness, right? Even though I think he's more advanced than what Anthony Richardson was. Maybe he don't have the same high-end tools. He's not 6'4" and runs a 4.3, but has proven big-time moments in the SEC, right? And then now we like, you know what, but we out on Jalen Milroe as a QB prospect.
I think with Milroe, with A-Rich, being at Florida was an absolute mess. Like, you know what I mean? From coaching to weapons, O-line, everything was bad at Florida that year. But for me, I remember going back and watching him, and for a 1-year starter, we've seen Milroe for 2 years, and it hasn't been much growth. I think that's what people are more concerned with, is that you don't see a lot of growth with him. It was like, at first, like that, we thought that Georgia game, it was like, man, he's about to take off. And then it plateaued, not even plateaued, it plateaued and it fell off a cliff after Georgia. And it was like putting the ball in harm's way, not reading concepts right, not reading post-snap coverages correctly. And it's like, Milroe, what are you doing with the ball? And it's just like those like weird decisions. If A-Rich made those at Florida as a 1-year starter, you're like, it's a first-year starter. But Milroe being a 2-year starter and a guy who's played more ball and still having those questions of how effective he is in the pocket, I think that's what scares a lot of people. I just think he needs reps more, not just reps, but needs the game to slow down. And Keith, like with the Senior Bowl, I think he needs to go out here and prove that he can get through his reads quickly, like and make the right decisions with the football. One-on-ones, be accurate with the ball. Like, we know he could push the ball down the field. It's the short and intermediate stuff that he struggled with. So when you get those team drills 11 on 11, deliver that in cut to that tight end in the middle. If it's Jake Brenningston, you got Big Jake on your team, fire that ball in there. Don't hold it. Don't double pump it. Don't clutch it. Let it rip. And you want to see him just play free. And I feel like this whole season he's been in his head and playing slow. As a result, play free, Jalen. At the Senior Bowl, just play free. Let the game come to you. Play it at a fast pace. Don't second guess yourself. Don't put too much on it. Just go out there and ball.
Yeah, no, I agree, DP. Let's do this. Let's transition right here, right? And we can pick up, just finish the conversation with Jalen and also do Jaxson Dart. So coming up next, we're going to finish off the Jalen Milroe conversation and jump into our guy, Jaxson Dart, coming up next.
I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories was attending a concert with my family, and the energy and excitement, it was unforgettable. Now Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature called Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And you know, like I do, if you've ever gone to an event, a concert, a game, whatever, with a group of 4 or 5, even 6, it's hard to find tickets for seats that are consecutive, that are side by side in one row. Guys, Game Time Picks helps you filter out the fluff so you don't have to worry about going through all of that. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use the redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Guys, you don't want to miss out on the deal like this. Download Game Time today. What time is it? You already know, guys. It's game time. So, Keith, what do you need to see from Jalen Milroe at the Senior Bowl that not so much because we both have him as a high second round draft pick? What can he do to potentially move himself up to be QB3 into the first round?
Yeah, you would like for him to showcase. Man, the Senior Bowl is tough. You would like for him to showcase the arm talent, right? Be able to push the ball vertically, obviously make the accurate throws so people can believe in his accuracy more as a passer, right? And we always talk about this. And I would say that this becomes the selfish part of your career. Like, yeah, you're going to be at the Senior Bowl with an Alabama helmet on, but this is about Jalen Milroe, right? And about you separating yourself. And you want to leave the Senior Bowl people saying, oh, you know what? Kind of just like we said for Anthony Richardson, right? That, oh, the situation was bad for him. It wasn't him, right? And so that's what he wants. He wants to be able to make all the accurate throws. I don't know, DP, because the reason why I'm buying into Jalen Milroe as a prospect is not that I believe that he's just going to sit in the pocket every game, right, and throw accurate passes. If this was the old version of the NFL, you would have concerns, right? I just you just buy in, like I said, the reasons, and I had same thing. I had a second round grade on Anthony Richardson. I finished with a second round grade on Anthony Richardson, but I was able to be like, you know what, project it, and we had this conversation all the time. If he goes with Shane Steichen, that's the best opportunity for him to win, right? Like being in that type of offense with him using his legs. When he struggled with the Colts, I'm like, you drafted this guy because he was 6'4", 240, and you don't want to let him run the football. So why did you even care if he ran a 4.3 if he wasn't going to be able to use his legs, right? Like what was the point? Like that makes no sense. You're taking away a superhero trait. And I think the same thing for Jalen. I would like for him to show that he's accurate with the football, but then also take it and go to the next level and maybe showcase his legs, right? Let's see his speed in person, because when he has rushing games, they're dominant games, right? Like when he gets off, he gets all he's torched LSU back-to-back years for I think 200 yards.
Georgia.
Yeah, Georgia. He lit them up. So I see where the discourse is with Jalen, right? And I think that too makes the conversation fun. Like I said, it's just comparing him to other dual threat quarterbacks. I was just like, okay, how are you out on Jalen, in on Anthony? You know what I'm saying? Like, and not you specifically, but just people, period. I think because they offer different things in different ways, and it's just more so about the next level of, hey, where are these quarterbacks going and where do they fit? So it's just interesting conversation. But guy he's dueled it out with, Jaxson Dart, DP, your guy. What are you looking for? Jaxson Dart at Ole Miss.
I think what you said about Jalen, right? Removing yourself from Alabama. I want to see Jaxson Dart away from Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss's offense. Jaxson Dart is a talented quarterback. Like he's a dual threat guy. He can run the ball. He's super tough. Like, you know what I mean? That, like, for example, that run we looked at with Riley Leonard, where he like flipped and nearly broke his neck against Georgia to get that first down to ice the game. That's the type of stuff that Jaxson Dart do. You know what I mean? Like the John Elway helicopter run in the red zone for the touch. Like Jaxson Dart put his body on the line. He's that type of guy too. My concerns with him, and he's really good on the first read. It's after that. Like Ole Miss dials up very schematic, easy throws to where he's not always going through his reads. Right, like when you watch the tape, you don't see the. I go back to Tua. I call it the sprinkler, the tick, tick, tick throw. Like going through your reads, I don't see that with Jaxson Dart. I see a guy that okay, we got the isolated number one option, and he might get to number two, and if he don't get to number two, then he's gonna scramble and try and create chaos. And it's like at the Senior Bowl, that's not gonna work. You got to play within the structure of the offense as these NFL. Couple years ago, remember Carson Strong got out there and he came out there, and I'm not saying do that, but like he came out there with a point to prove, and he was like, I'm gonna show y'all that I'm not a statue in the pocket. And then he started running the ball when he wasn't supposed to run it, and the coaches were getting frustrated. He was like, Carson, I don't think that's what they want you to do, big dog. I think they want you to throw the ball. Like, you know, it's like Jaxson, just play within the structure of the offense. And like for me, because he could throw the ball down the field, he has a good arm. But it's the simple, like, structural stuff. Like, okay, we keep you in the pocket, and you have NFL concepts. Can you get that done? Because I can't expect the NFL coordinator to say, well, we're going to take Ole Miss game plan and scheme and put it into – no, like these NFL coaches want to run what they want to run. They'll devise it around you, but they're going to run their offense. Can he run the NFL offense? That's my biggest concern with him. Learn that quickly at the end at the Senior Bowl. We've talked to players. How many times we talked to players like, man, as soon as I got my playbook, I went back to my room and I just studied it. I had to master. I learned it quick. We those type of high character guys, Jaxson, go do that and then come out here and show us on the field that you can make the in-structure throws, NFL concepts, and get through your reads. Like that first read's not always going to be open. What can you do when they must rush you? They bracket you to the pocket. Can you then come off a one on the right side and come back to two in the middle and fire it off?
Yeah, with Jaxson DP, there's so much. And I was just about to blank on his name, Matt Corral. You do not want to take that trajectory. And I'm not talking about any off the field stuff or any rumors or things like that. I'm talking about as the QB prospect, right? As the quarterback. And I remember watching Matt, and I had some similar feelings, right? That
we texted about them when we were watching them.
Yeah, right. And it was just like watching him inside the Lane Kiffin offense, like, hey, if it's scheme wide open, he gonna hit it, right? If it's not, and it's not part of the actual structure like of the play in the first read, then I don't know what's going to happen at that. It's a big question mark, right? And I think some of the same things for Jaxson Dart. And I've seen somebody, the other part is this, is I would like to see him get out the pocket and make a couple throws. Somebody said that they believe Jaxson Dart was the best pressure quarterback in college football. And I don't agree at all. CC every big time game that Ole Miss has had, right? Like CC every single game, and look at the production behind it. So I'm looking for Jaxson Dart in this game, DP, to show that he can be a 3-level accurate football player, right? Short, intermediate, and the deep balls. And then I think for him, it would be about, can he, because you want to, and we talked about this, I think, with comps. I mean, not comps, but like kind of perfect pairings, right? Like which NFL team we want to see him go to. And we kind of talked about like the Sean McVay, Kevin O'Connell type situations. I want to see him get on the center because, and I think, I was standing next to you. I don't know if you remember this. And we were at the Senior Bowl and we were standing, and I think they were doing goal line in, and Michael Penix was under center. And remember, I turned to you and I said, DP, I said he might end up with a team that's going to put him under center, because I said he looked really good in play action rolling out. And just so happened, he went to Atlanta Falcons, who the Atlanta Falcons OC was the QB coach with the Rams, right? So I want to see if Jaxson Dart can kind of play and that, because I almost feel like that's what he needs, DP, like to be in a more structured situation and then see what he can do from that, from a more traditional perspective.
No, 100%, Keith. It's like You know, the fact that somebody said he's the best pressure quarterback. I got a couple numbers. I got a couple numbers for you. When he's been under pressure this year, he's completed 45% of his passes. He threw 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. On the season, he's put the ball. He just has I think it was the LSU game. It's like he started off hot and strong, and then he fizzled out. And it's like,
and DP, the
why does this
credit
keep
is
happening?
That's been every single year he's played LSU. I think for the past, I think he's been a starter for 3 years. It's been the last 3 years. He started out against LSU, and then it just faded off.
And then you think about the Kentucky game, right? Like, you know what I mean? You got another late game situation. I think they lost to Florida where he threw, I think, the game-losing interception. Like, in those high-pressure moments, I don't trust him as a quarterback right now. So I do think putting him in a structured situation, and that's the other part with Jaxson Dart. Protect the football. Don't put it in harm's way. Jaxson Dart, remember we talked about Juice Wells? Jaxson Dart was throwing this man into double and triple coverage. I'm surprised Juice ain't finally got up off the ground, just threw his arms up like, man, what are we doing? Like, I was like, Jaxson, that's not the right read, man. I know you want to get him the ball and feed him the ball, especially when Trey Harris went down, but I'm like, bro, y'all gotta devise a way to get him free from the bracket before you throw the ball to him, Jaxson. So I think he's a super talented quarterback. I think he could be a better pro than college player. But the Senior Bowl, he's got to be accurate. He needs to be on time. He needs to protect the football. Show that you can play from the neck up and not just play full of tools. And again, play mentally. Like, these are going to be NFL concepts you're going to be running the entire week. Can you handle this in a short amount of time to show us and give us that? Because right now, Heaven's a 3rd-round pick. After they beat the brakes off of Duke and he threw 400 yards, people like, he's the best quarterback in the draft. And I'm like, all right, we didn't watch Kentucky. We didn't watch Florida. We didn't watch LSU. Like, okay, it was Duke that proved he was the best quarterback in the class, right? Like, no, like let's show me something in those big games. Like, because you remember they started off super hot. They got the SEC play, and it was like
them in Ohio State went like the first 6 games without playing anybody.
Cupcakes, full on cupcakes,
and then they finally ran into Kentucky. I think Kentucky was the first SEC,
and they lost. They lost. He completed less than 50. He completed 52% of his passes against South Carolina, and they won. He completed 57% of his passes against LSU. He did complete. He lit up Arkansas. They whooped Arkansas. That was his best game against SEC competition. Against Georgia, 59% of his passes completed. Against Florida, 58. Against Mississippi State, 58. You know, it's like against SEC competition, brother, you struggled to complete passes. And that's a problem for me. So he's got to show that he can rectify that in an NFL offense at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, I'm looking at DP real quick before we have to transition. Just those I want to watch him just in one-on-ones, right? Like throwing the speed out against a tight coverage, right? Something like that. So I want to see those type of things, him just letting it rip. But DP, let's keep this thing going, man. And we're going to Oregon. Yes, we're going to talk about quarterback Dillon Gabriel. What are the expectations? What do we want to see from him at the Senior Bowl?
From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 back in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. Guys, go visit the website and check out the latest betting lines surrounding your favorite teams or leagues. To get in on this action, all you need to do is just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $200 back in bonus bets. Again, join FanDuel.com today and get started with $200 back in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com to join today. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout out for being our everydayers. Oregon quarterback Dillon Gabriel, Keith, going over to Mobile. We get to see him up close and personal. He's listed at 6 foot even. I think that's not true. I think he's 5'11", but nonetheless, 6 foot even, 200 pounds. He is what? This is six. He's a 6-year senior, 6 year in college football. Started off at UCF, landed in Oklahoma for 2 years, had good seasons. They had a final good season at Oregon. Keith, when you look at Dillon Gabriel, what do you want to see from him in Mobile? We'll be up close in person. We get to see him live and in person. What does he need to do to? Because I think right now, I have him as like a top of the 4th round quarterback. What can he do to move himself up into top of the 3rd, mid-3rd round and be a day 2 pick?
Yeah, I think what he can do, and I think for him, it's probably the most simplest out of all 3 quarterbacks we talked about. People want to see his arm talent. I think people want to see how live his arm is because we talked about the height, the weight, right? People can automatically associate that with, hey, you don't have a strong arm. People want to see how live his arm is. Does the ball jump off his arm? Because the thing is this, the film itself, right? They're very high highs, and then there are a couple lows, right, that have you question. But then you also throw in the height, weight, right? And so you want to know, is this a athletic threshold that he has to carry, or is this just something that can still be pulled out of him and elevate his play, right? I like Dillon for what he could be, right? If I can grab Dillon in the 3rd round and develop him, and like I said, I use the Senior Bowl as a benchmark to where he has good arm talent, and he's a smart guy, he makes good decisions, then I'm saying, hey, if I have an aging quarterback, right, or I have a situation where I need a really good backup quarterback, right? I love the Miami Dolphins, right? Where I can't just lose 2 and then my whole season, and then now my star wide receiver wants to leave. Like everybody wants to leave now, right? I would look at that situation. I'm gonna do a film breakdown on inserting him into that offense, right? And what he can do just to help the Miami Dolphins. But something like that, I think he's a perfect quarterback for that. And just seeing if you can kind of bridge the gap between what you have now and then potentially to him. But I think you want to show the arm talent so you could get NFL talent evaluators to believe that, hey, he's a smart guy, but he also has good arm strength to where he has a ceiling to be able to be a consistent NFL quarterback.
Yeah, no, Keith, I agree with you. And it's another name I throw out. You brought up Tua because, like if he's a backup for Tua, he immediately fits right into that offense, right? That RPO, quick game, he fits it perfectly for Mike McDaniel. I think what he could be in the right situation, I think you can get some Brock Purdy out of him.
Well, I was gonna bring him up too. That's another name I like a lot. Brock Purdy, and even for, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but I agree.
Good.
For what Brock Purdy lacked in, right? I wrote the report. I gave Brock Purdy a 7th round grade. Now I'll say it today, tomorrow. He was a 7th rounder at Iowa State. I'll say it all day, every day, right?
The tape didn't lie.
No. And he had a lot of tape, DP. It wasn't 1 year. He had years of the same tape. But credit to him and what he's done, but putting him in a good situation. Do I think Dillon can throw with anticipation? Yes. Do I think he can properly read a defense? Yes. Do I think he can play in the structure of an offense? Yes. So could that be potential? I guess so, right?
And I think I agree with you. He could do all those things. And of course, he is a solid athlete too, though. He can make those plays with his legs, similar to what, like, you remember the playoff run last year with Brock Purdy. He had to fit, like he saw enough. Like, what was the big knock on Brock Purdy was beating man coverage. Even though you had all those weapons, if you played tight man to man on him, you got him. And then he figured it out. Like, okay, well, I'm a pretty decent athlete. Let me start using my legs to counter that, right? And then you saw in the Super Bowl, Steve Spagnuolo was like, yeah, I'm tired of that. Like, I'm going to bring down a safety, and we're going to spy you, and we're going to make you still play against man coverage. I think the same thing, like Brock Purdy using his legs, same thing with Dillon Gabriel. We saw that in the Big Ten championship game. Abdul Carter, Danny Dennis Sutton, and that defense tried to get pressure on him. He's getting out of the pocket, and then he's making plays with his legs, or he's extending plays and then making the throw down the field. I think Dillon Gabriel could be a good NFL quarterback. It's going to be, and it's like this for all quarterbacks for the most part, but simply because of the physical deficiencies, where do you land? But I think at the Senior Bowl, like, the arm talent is going to be big for him. Can you drive those those intermediate between the hash throws? Can you make those drive throws consistently? I remember when Mac Jones came out, and I'll say this: Mac Jones had one of the weakest arms I had ever evaluated. Like, just on like pure arm strength, no. Like, and I remember watching them, and I would get so frustrated. I never forget it. They were inside the 10, in their own 10. Devonta Smith went on a double move. He had 5 yards of separation. Mac Jones was protected, put his whole body into it. The ball ended up being a 50-50 contested catch because the ball hung so high in the air, and it took so long to get there. The DB caught up. But
DP,
I remember
the wind was blowing. DP, the wind was blowing.
It had to be something because I was like, "There's no way in the world you did that, Mac. Like you had nobody hit you. You threw that with all arm and body." But I remember at his they had 2 pro days. Like the first pro day, he turned down drive throws. I remember watching the broadcast, and they said the scouts wanted him to make drive throws at the pro day. He still wouldn't do it. He was throwing the ball down the field, trying to show I got the arm to throw it down the field. None of the passes were caught for the most part because he was just full arm, just launching it. And it was like, no, we want to see, can you make the routine in-cut throws? Like zone defense, can you just drill that in-cut? That 5 to 10 yard like end breaker. Can you drill that between 2 zone defenders? He wouldn't do it. I need to see Dillon Gabriel do that at the Senior Bowl when they go 11 on 11. Because I think he's accurate, Keith. I think he get the one-on-ones. I think he might be a guy that shines in the one-on-ones, just throwing the ball with anticipation, touch, and everything, an arc for his guys to go make a play on it. I think he'll do outstanding in that. It's when they get to those team drills, also getting under center. He's a shorter quarterback. We've seen how much that's helped Bryce Young this year. Get him under center, get the play action, get him on the move, let him, give him those type of concepts. I think you can get a good quarterback out of him, but I do want to see that arm strength. I do want to see him make those throws between the numbers. Because they knock short quarterbacks all the time. Can Kyler Murray throw between the numbers? Can Russell Wilson throw between the numbers? Can Bryce Young throw between all the short quarterbacks have to overcome the same narrative. Can you throw over the middle of the field, over the offensive line, over the D-line in the middle of the field? Those are the things I want to see from Dillon Gabriel, because I do think if he does those things well and kills it in 11 on 11s, I think he's going to interview extremely well, likable dude. Keith, I think, he's going to move himself up into that day 2 range and be a 3rd-round pick for a team.
Yeah, I could definitely see that 100%. But DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. Every listen is greatly appreciated. Here, I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all come talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube, wherever you listen to podcasts, to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen today and every day. Shout for being our everydayers. Keith, I think we should keep the Senior Bowl train going, because we're going to blink, a couple of sleeps, and then we'll be in Mobile ready for the actual event. Let's look at the wide receivers, Keith. Let's look at some of the top wide receivers that are going to be at the Senior Bowl. Talk about what it means for them and what they can do for their draft stock down in Mobile with Jim Nagy and the crew. So let's talk about that on tomorrow's show. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.